Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of Just Shillin'. I am one of your hosts, Sean Hoffman, and right across from me is Mr. Andy Bell. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, thank you, Sean. Good evening, Sean. Good evening, friends.
I think we're getting the hang of this.
I know, I know. I've got to remember the slight delay, the ever so slight delay. We are thousands of miles away from each other, and I need to be mindful of that. So, how you doing, buddy? How's your week been?
It's been pretty good. We've had some pretty nice weather. It's just been nice to be able to go out and go for like longer walks without dealing with all the snow. With that being said, we are getting reports now that we could have, we being where like the general area, not like at my house specifically, we could get 12 feet of snow possible. There's no way that that's going to happen. That's always just the news being dramatic. I bet we'll get like 6 inches. We'll see. Fingers crossed. I guess you'll find out here in a couple days.
Mm.
But it's always exciting when everybody starts messaging me. They're like, "Hope you got the bread and the milk. Hope you got the bread and milk. It's coming. It's the snowpocalypse is coming for you." It's like it'll be all right. I don't think it will. It
So,
never plans out like that.
is this unusual for you guys? Is it late in the season, or is it normally like this?
It's normally like this. Like this is
Right.
so like last year was a record breaking year where we just had unreal snow. But this year's been super light, like all like the last 10 plus. Um, and so it's pretty normal. Like it should still be pretty heavy right now. But this kind of like really dramatic stuff that kind of like you're seeing in California all over the place. Like when you hear like
Mm.
the our SoCal friends talking about like the atmospheric river and all the precipitation they're getting. It's kind of it's like it seems like it's all or nothing right now, but we have quite a bit of stuff that kind of takes it away before it really gets to us. So they're like 12 feet, and then it gets here and it's like 6 inches. Um, but yeah, so that's exciting. But other than that, man, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'd love to say that we've got equally as exciting weather, but we don't. It says it's either cold, you know, hovering around 0 degrees Celsius, um, but bright, not a cloud in the sky, or when it's warmer, it's raining. So we've got this kind of duality of weather at the moment. Like I said last week, though, the buds are starting to come out, and my apple tree is starting to bloom. Although I'm not expecting the full blossom, until certainly the end of March. So it is getting warmer, but what comes with the ground, sorry, the temperature rising, is obviously the rain as well, which is a little bit miserable. But yeah, I mean, the weather is the weather. It's the UK. I mean, it's we are our own meme, aren't we? But yeah, it's all good. Week's been good. I think I said to you last week that I was planning to take Lucy and the kids away for the weekend to the theatre, taking a little bit of culture, but most importantly, to kind of take our minds off some of the stuff that's been going on in the early months of this year, especially with members of her family that have been in hospital, and it did the trick, mate. It really did. So it was a nice long weekend. Enjoyed the kids' company, which is always good fun. Stayed at their place in town, and took in a show. And yeah, I went to see the Mousetrap. Like I said last week, it was the Agatha Christie play in its 73rd year. It's never been made made as a movie, or certainly even as a novel. You can only get it in written format as a script. You can't get it in any other format from that. And it was good fun. And I do recommend anyone in the UK, or indeed visiting the UK, if you do get the opportunity, it's a really good production. It's a very kind of old English type of acting, with frightfully lovely people, all very good actors that enunciate their words extremely well, awfully lovely. But that was the style. I mean, it's meant to be based in the 1930s, 1940s. So that was kind of the kind of style that it was meant to portray, and it did a really good job. And and like I said last week, it's it's a whodunit, and are not meant to tell anyone who did it because the surprise is, or the catch being is that you only find out who does the murder if you go and see the show. So yeah, it was good fun, good fun. At the same time, I was able to excuse me. At the same time, I was able to visit my favorite comic book store, being Forbidden Planet, the largest uh, nerd store in the UK. And I don't know if you saw some of the things I stuck into our Discord chat, but there was a few. They sell the typical kind of comics, toys, key rings, kind of memorabilia from all types of fandom. But they also sell the really high end stuff as well. So like the sculptures, the really expensive hot toys, and so on and so forth. And there was a particular sculpture or a bust of Chrysanthemum, the Wookiee from Book of Boba Fett. And being a Wookiee guy, I was really interested in buying it. But my my good lady wife was with me, and she made me see sense. So I did walk away with a black chrysanthemum, but a significantly cheaper one. I got a
You just got to hold it
three
close
point
to your face and have the same
three
effect. Just like hold it
three point
close.
seven five inch 3.75 inch plastic toy of the same character. So it was significantly cheaper, and yeah, she did. She kept me in tow and made sure that I didn't in any way spend my retirement in a comic shop. So that was good fun. While we were there, we also walked past the Warhammer store. Now, I'm not a Warhammer or tabletop gamer at all, but I'm in awe of of folks that are into it. In particular, our friends from the Scruffies and yourself as well, that really do this kind of intricate kind of painting of these little figures. And so I went in there and spent just literally 20 or 30 minutes just watching these guys in awe or having a great time on a Saturday. That was quite the experience. And I sent a few notes to the Scruffies. Ed in particular is a big Warhammer fan, and explained to him that I'd undertaken the pilgrimage to pay honor to him, or homage to him. Sorry. And then we ended the weekend by booking our tickets for Dune. So Dune is out this weekend this week, sorry, in the UK. And Lucy has conceded to come along with me, kicking and screaming. So we've booked some tickets for this weekend. So it's nice to be doing stuff at the weekends again, and not staying at home and worrying about folk and worrying about what's going on at work and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a great weekend just gone, and looks to be a good weekend coming up as well.
So has Lucy seen the first Dune, or are
She
you going to do a rewatch before you go?
she did see it, and it's really not her cup of tea. And I think a lot of it is down to the complexity of the story. She wants to know what's going on. Who's that guy? Who's that person? What does that mean? What does that mean to the and then with Dune, of course, it's very very complex. You have to go into the history of the Bene Gesserit, for example, and the idea of what is the weirding way and all this really funky stuff. And at that point, I've lost her completely. So, however, she has read a few reviews, and conceded that there were some of the reviews that said it's significantly better in their mind than the first film. Now, I love the first film because it's Dune, but it's significantly more. Should we say it's faster paced? It's more action packed than the first film, and for that alone, she said she'll come and join me.
So
If
I'll
not,
just skip past the first part of that when I play this for Madison, because I'm trying to convince her to go, and I got to lean on like the Austin Butler and Florence Pugh angle to try to like
yeah,
bring her in. But I also got to get her to watch the first one, so I may lose her there. So we'll see.
yeah, yeah, it's a tough sell, but it's so worth it. Like I said, I've heard it's epic, and it's getting some really good write ups and some very good ratings, audience scores in particular on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, which is good. Good news.
Nice, nice.
So, anything you've been watching this week? Anything
So yeah,
captured
yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
televisual attention?
So this is kind of like I was debating whether I bring it up in like, oh, is it like how I've been, like the catching up, or is it more of a
Mm.
watching? So I'm just gonna put it right smack dab in the middle. We actually made it out of the house and out of the mountains for a little bit this past weekend, and we went to the middle of nowhere. Uh, it's labeled as Sacramento, California, but it's like a solid hour north into like kind of like Native American land where there's like casinos and stuff, and they have a Hard Rock
Cool.
casino there, and we got to go see one of my favorite bands that I haven't got to see in concert in a very very long time. So that was really cool. Uh, and then just drove all the way back. So it's like a 2.5 hour drive to get to this place, and it was really fun. Lots of fire, lots of lasers, lots of lots of heavy music. So that was a good time, and didn't get to come home. But yeah, that was really fun. Um, but in terms of television and movies, the usual. We had the usual, the Halo. The only thing I'll say about
Mhm.
that is it is definitely picking up. If you're somebody who enjoys the Halo franchise, but isn't like extremely beholden to that story, and maybe you didn't like the first season as much, like you thought it was too slow or anything like that, I highly recommend picking it up this season. It is it's a totally different look and feel. Like it's building on top of that, but it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely more involved and more like, I don't know, Master Chiefish, more
Yeah.
action, things like that. So it's pretty cool. Um, Obviously, Masters of the Air. It's going how we predicted. It is
Mhm.
even further off the rails now. Um, and just yeah, good times watching other people have bad times. Um, we'll see where it goes. And then outside of that, we have another update for our Oscar movies rewatch or Best Picture
Oh,
nominees
excellent.
watch. Um, we're down to two left. The one that we watched this week is called Poor Things. It's with Emma Stone, like mostly Emma Stone, but there's like Mark Ruffalo's in it and Willem Dafoe. That movie, um, bring two seatbelts because it is a wild ride. Uh, don't if you don't already know about it, don't look it up ahead of time. Um,
I think I've seen some of the ad. It's quite fantastical, isn't it? Is she like a robot or something?
she's she is not a robot, but she
Right.
is
Okay. Leave it.
not standard. I will say
Okay.
you're onto something, but she's not normal. Um,
Right.
uh, it is very fantastical. It's like a alternate fantasy kind of thing. I can kind of compare it like the visuals are insane. The story is very good. Just if you watch it, sit with it. It's like uh it's definitely eye-opening and kind of like thought-provoking in a lot of ways. It's not for kids. Um, it's definitely not like a hey, let's just put it on in the background kind of thing. It's not that. Not
Because
really,
it's
not really
shot.
that either.
It's not a Wes Anderson film, is it?
It kind of looks like one. It's like
Well,
if
that's
you
what I
if
was
you
asking. That's what I was asking because it looks it's kind of in those. It's very pastel and hard edges and soft focus. Do you know what I mean?
yes, there's a lot of Wes Anderson style cinematography in it. If you crank up the saturation on a
Yeah.
Wes Anderson film, um, and that's and there's other similarities, but don't think you're gonna see like Moonrise Kingdom going into
Yeah.
this because it is not quite. Buckle
Right.
up, you're in for a ride. It's but watch it, see it through to the end, and it's really really interesting.
Well, I know
Definitely.
that's one thing that's what one for Lucy. Lucy will she adores Emma Stone anyway. So and it's one of those ones that's being rather heavily advertised in the UK on British streaming services. So I think we'll definitely jump in on that one.
Yes, but don't don't look it up ahead of time though. Like, I mean, it's
No, I
not like
won't.
it's a big,
I
not
promise.
like it's a big spoilers or anything like that. But it's just, I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna talk about what goes on it, but there's obviously like controversies and stuff with it. But I think there's also good dialogue and good conversation about what those controversies are or are not. So
Right.
it's a
Okay.
very thought provoking movie, and it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. Is it my favorite? No, but I do think it is Madison's favorite.
Right.
I think that's her pick as of right now, and we only have two left, and so we'll see how it all shakes out.
Excellent.
But that's all I've been watching besides random YouTube videos about black holes and other nighttime gummy videos that make it hard to sleep.
we we had a we had a long weekend, so we I kind of have had to write off 3 out of 7 evenings. Still rewatching Scrubs when the kids are here, so they weren't here the last week. We were with them, so we haven't seen that. Battlestar Galactica is my cooking my cooking program. Sorry, still watching For All Mankind. Nearly finished in season 4. Again, I think I said last week that season 3 I didn't find as compelling to me as seasons 1 and 2. Still great, still very great, but it's very futuristic now. It's very I wouldn't say unbelievable. It's still within the realms of technology that we know and love today, but it's very fantastical because they're really pushing the boundaries in terms of space exploration and mining, cosmic mining and so on and so forth. I'm missing the kind of the relatable look back on history that was very much part of seasons 1 and 2, but it's still a very good story, and I'm so glad I found it. And like I said, at the end of season 4, that will be us done. So not too far away now, and I hopefully be moving on to the next thing. Um, Obviously, we have seen our discussion point for today, which will be Bad Batch episode 4, and how we're getting on, what we thought of today's episode, and how we're getting on with the whole vibe of the series as a whole. But I also tried, in the interest of having something new to talk about, I also tried Avatar, which has launched. We didn't talk about it actually, but it actually launched last week on Netflix, and it's the remake of the original Nickelodeon cartoon, not to be confused with the James Cameron multi-billion-dollar franchise set on Pandora. It's a very different story, um, and I enjoyed it. Um, And the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant is because I don't know if I've got the staying power to do the story a third time. So if you think about the original cartoon series is epic, and it's really hard to beat. It was Lucy used to work at the weekend. Sorry, my wife before she retrained was a jeweler, and she used to work at the weekends. And so as the kids were young and growing up, I had the kids for myself at the weekends. I was very much looking after them, and we got heavily into the original Avatar cartoon series, which I think is at least 3 seasons. 3 or 6, I can't remember. I know there was a lot of DVDs that went with it anyway. Point being is that it means an awful lot to me, and it means an awful lot to the kids, because from that they themselves, outside of my influence, have really got into anime, really got into Studio Ghibli as well. I think I've said to you, offline that they're really into Studio Ghibli, and in fact, um, they go to an awful lot of the live productions, the stage plays, and the which is currently touring in the UK. Anyway, I'm going off a tangent. I promise I wouldn't do that. Then obviously there was the film. So that was then translated from the original cartoon, again epic, to the film, which was awful. I'm not going to. We are a positive podcast, and um, I'm glad I saw it, I guess, is the one positive thing I can say. But it was not a good interpretation of the original source material, or even a particularly good interpretation for the silver screen of the source material. And there are many um, diversity problems around diversity and inclusion that I have in that particular production. In any case, that aside, so I was looking forward to the new TV series, coming out, and I sat down and watched episode one, and it's good. It's good. It looks amazing. There's a lot of the. It's funny, isn't it? How used to the volume we've got, or stagecraft. How used to that kind of world building we've got that we were spoilt with on the Mandalorian. But you can tell it's been used a fair bit in this production. That said, it's done very, very well. And it's production value, production values, special effects, actors. It's all on point. My only struggle is me. It's not the program. It's me. Can I go through the series a third time? Sorry, can I go through the story a third time, knowing exactly what happens? Because at the moment, it's very, very true. If I go by episode one, it's very, very true to the original source material. So I will finish the season, because I think from what I've seen so far, it looks pretty good. And again, looking at some of the reviews, they really are quite mixed actually. And I will finish it because I do love the story. It's just that where my headspace is at my head's at the moment. Have I got the gumption? Have I got it in me at the moment to go through that story again? And I'm not sure at the moment. So I
Yeah.
like it. I like to see. I'm just not quite sure whether I've got the enthusiasm at the moment to see something familiar in a in a reformat.
When it was also it was already done well, and so a lot of times these kind of things
It's
struggle
difficult, man. Yeah.
because you have you either a lot of times you just meet expectations or you miss them. It's very
Mm,
hard to exceed them when it's art the source material was already so good. Like we talked about this a couple weeks ago when it comes to like books and other things, but those are at least different mediums that you can translate and do differently.
mm,
This is just going from animation to live action, where
mm.
it's that's a very, especially when it starts in animation and you try to take it to live action, that's a very, very difficult thing to, let alone exceed expectations. It's hard to meet the same expectations because of,
Yeah, and it's almost like I don't know how to articulate this, or I don't know how to put this in words that make sense to myself, let alone anyone else. But it almost would have been in my mind because it's been done so perfectly well. It's almost like, well, why didn't you just continue the story, or do a parallel story, or do a reimagining within the same universe, but on a different on an older avatar? Because as we know, avatars have been are a generational superhuman or a super being. There have been many avatars over the years to protect the four kingdoms. And I'm surprised they didn't do a different take, like a prequel or a sequel. Doing the same story again is probably what's got me on my back foot a little bit because it was done so perfectly well. It's a little bit like somebody saying to you. It's a little bit like somebody saying to you today, "Hey, they're going to remake. Empire Strikes Back."
yeah, it
Sorry.
feels it feels like low hanging fruit and a borderline pandering. Like this is something I've noticed a lot recently, especially with like the Netflix kind of stuff. It's it feels low risk, and it feels like there is some creative director who is hell bent on bringing that style of, like, if you want to call it
Mm,
anime, I know it's not truly, but it's like they're bringing that those style of animated stories to a larger audience,
mm,
like, but they never do it well. But in the same time, it's like, oh, if we do some Avatar story that's a prequel or sequel, then people will be pissed. Like, this is
mm,
like, I feel like this is like the meeting they have. It's not what the truth is. It's just like, well, people will be mad that we don't do this. And plus, if we do this, then that keeps subscribers and keeps retention. And
mm,
we'll just do this, whether it succeeds or not. And like, we're just trying to build these into franchises and expand them to people who are like, I don't really want to watch a cartoon, like because there are a lot of people out there who are like that. It's
I agree, and I'd probably say my wife's one of those people. She's got no interest in. There's only one cartoon that she's ever really enjoyed. Sorry, outside of Disney, of course. Like everyone, she enjoys Disney and the Pixar stuff. But there's only one serious cartoon that she's ever enjoyed in my company, and that was Arcane. So the spin-off cartoon they did of League of Legends, and I love that. I love that. I love that cartoon. Sorry, I love that season. It's not a cartoon. I love that. I love that season. It's just for me, it's completely perfect. Anyway, that's a different discussion for a different day. So yeah, I've seen it anyway. So that was that, and then obviously we've got today's discussion point. There's a couple of things that I did pick up in the news today, this week. Sorry, despite being incommunicado for at least 3 out of 7 days. The first was I noticed that they've remade Shogun. So Shogun was a big TV drama, TV miniseries during the late 70s, early 80s, I guess, with Richard Chamberlain, the the famous actor Richard Chamberlain, and he was it was a story of obviously um, the traders from the west sinking their ship off the coast of feudal Japan, and the survivors being this particular captain, becoming really entrenched in the culture and falling in love and really being part of the shogun culture. And I loved it as a kid. It was something very different. And I know that the the media content that's available today to our children is a lot richer. There's a heck of a lot more diversity. There's a heck of a lot more content for a start than we had as kids. But Shogun back in the late 70s, early 80s, if I remember when it actually came out, was there was nothing like that. There was nothing like that at all. And if there was anything, if I'm perfectly blunt, to be honest with you, anything that represented Japanese culture at the time was typically about the war. It was about the Second World War, which is a crying shame. When there was this amazing, story to be told about, certainly about feudal Japan, and I loved it. And so I didn't even know it was coming out, but it wasn't until um, I was flicking through Disney Plus the other day that I saw that they have landed the first 2 episodes of this remake with some really cool actors. Zero whitewashing going on here. They're taking it quite seriously. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. So I haven't seen it yet, and I can't tell you whether it's good or not. But that put a bit of a spring in my step as new stuff that I would potentially enjoy over the coming weeks and months ahead, especially when I finish For All Mankind. Second was I don't know if you ever played Star Wars Galaxies, the Sony Entertainment game some years ago. It was an MMO. It was basically I loved it. It was I lost probably a good 5 or 6 years of my life to that game, whereby I had one or two avatars or characters that you would take through a skill tree progression story by choosing a profession and doing lots of different things. I was ironically, well, I had a Twi'lek character and I had ironically a Wookiee character, and I grew them up to a reasonably high level. But it was a it was an MMO, not in the context of go here, have a battle, shooty, here's a mission, go and do this. It literally was you were living in the Star Wars universe. It was massive, absolutely huge, and you could build communities. And in fact, part of the enjoyment I had of this game was really becoming part of a community, becoming a city, your player owned cities. And they ended up going through what they call NGE, which is the new gaming experience, which somewhat dumbed the whole game down to try and make it more popular with the World of Warcraft type of gamers. It never really was the same thing again, and I won't go into too much detail because that is a conversation one day I would love to have with Hawes if we ever lucky enough to get him on this pod, because it really was a piece of work. This game in the very early days of it. But anyway, there's over the years they've been doing these. There's one or two fans that haven't, despite Star Wars Galaxies being shut down quite a few years ago now, probably in the at least late noughties. It must be that long. It's at least 10, 15 years. Anyway, there's been a couple of emulators going on. A couple of die-hard fans have had these emu sites that have been running the game for quite a few years, and there's a new one called Star Wars Galaxies Hardcore, and the beta is being released in a couple of days, and we'll stick the link in the chat. Sorry, in the show notes at the end. But essentially, it's um, another emulator of Star Wars Galaxies, but the consequences of your actions are really quite brutal. In that, when you die, and you respawn, but you respawn with nothing, absolutely nothing. You lose all your possessions, and it's almost combined it with the kind of concept of a battle royale scenario whereby if someone kills you, they can loot everything that you own, as opposed to the old game, which just you still kept your possessions and everything. Anyway, I found that quite interesting. And if you like me and you have some nostalgia towards that old game, suggest you check it out, see what it's about. And then lastly, I saw again a bit of a surprise came out of nowhere was a game again that crikey, when did the Handsome Dan collection come out? A game franchise called Borderlands, which was kind of like it's a post-apocalyptic kind of game whereby you choose one of four professions, and it's almost cell shaded. It's like a cartoony type of game whereby it's a first person shooter. I wouldn't really call it a shooter. It's a first person story whereby you strive for glory, treasures, and success on this barren wasteland of a planet or planets. And it's quite funny. It really is quite funny. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and like I said, it's rendered in a quite a cartoony style. Again, very much cell shaded, a little bit like the Resistance cartoon, for example, the Star Wars Resistance cartoon. That kind of rendering or that kind of 3D animation, and it's good fun. And the characters mean an awful lot to me. I mean, I've got Claptrap, who is the resident robot of the game. I've actually got a model of that lovely mofo here on my desk. But it's a great game series, and they're turning it into a TV series. And the first thing I do is always hold my breath and say a few Hail Marys, because it scares me whenever anything that I loved or had fun with is turned into something else. And the first thing, of course, I do is hope that they don't mess it up and they make a good job of it. It is a bit strange because there's a lot of people. I mean, Kate Blanchett is there, as is Jamie Lee Curtis. There's a few others there as well, and it's quite a. And I don't. I mean, I'm old, so I don't. I hope I'm not sounding ageist, but it's quite a mature, established bunch of actors in this
It's an interesting
story.
pick. It's an interesting set of picks for sure.
When you consider that the actual the game and the characters in the game were or seem to be significantly younger. Now, of course, someone's going to say, Andy, don't talk nonsense. They're cartoons in the game. Yeah, of course they are. But their characters, their demeanor, their physicality, everything about them seemed a lot younger. So, I mean, hey, listen, I love Kate Blanchett. It's a weird one because she's this kind of punker style type of badass woman, which she is a badass woman, but it's a very young look for a more mature actor to play, and I hope that's not offending anyone. And I really hope it's a really, really great role that she has, and she absolutely kills it. Because I love her, I absolutely love her to bits. But it's just a a very, very strange role for her to play, and very much, I would have said, outside of her normal repertoire as a serious actor. Anyway, that's the news that I picked up this week. As I said, it's not a huge amount, but it's a decent enough for 4 days anyway.
So, but when you were talking about the Star Wars Galaxies thing, it reminded me of. So I didn't play it. I didn't play the game, but I was reading about the new beta for the hardcore mode, and it's
Hmm.
interesting, like some of the other aspects of it, where it's like, oh, you can go find like a cloner and get cloned, and then you get like XP and stuff to like kind of rebuild up. But it's like it is like almost like a permadeath, a lot of things. But then it couldn't help. I couldn't help but be reminded of like a series of the board games that exist. They're like the Legacy series. I don't know if you've ever heard of those, but there's like a Risk Legacy, Pandemic Legacy, and like Ticket to Ride Legacy, and a bunch of others. Where it's a similar concept where the decisions that you make in the game like affect the board game itself. Like and then all future play. So like it's not about playing a single session, it's about playing a season. And so like you'll be playing and then something happens and you gotta like rip up cards, and like you can't, those cards are
Yeah, yeah,
gone,
yeah.
like you destroy them. It's not like, oh, put them in the box and save them. No, you're just like, no, you are foreverly, like, I know Pandemic Legacy is like one of my favorites. Like I don't know if you ever played the Pandemic games, but those are like S tier quality board games in my book. And like the legacy version's like, oh, you lost half the world. Like take these stickers and just destroy half of your board game because you can no longer play that stuff anymore. And it plays multiple seasons, and there's pieces hidden inside the box, like in secret flaps or whatever. Uh it's just that kind of like actions have consequences. It's about like the storytelling narrative going forward. I love that kind of oh, I can just start over again, whatever, whatever. It's like, no, like you lost it all, and things are now different for you. It's not like you're just resetting back to the beginning of the level. It reminds me a lot of that a little bit, and it's pretty interesting.
Funny enough, I bought Sorry, for the family, and we've never played it. I bought it
Oh,
ironically during the pandemic, and although I think it's significantly older than the
it is
pandemic,
older. It is older than that. It's maybe a little off putting to play it during the middle of the pandemic. Like most of my plays were
yeah, I
before,
was
and
told.
so it's like, ugh.
Yeah, I was told to go do one when I turned up on Christmas Day. I was like, "Dad, no, we're not playing this game." So, we will revisit it, but I think my timing was a little bit off when I originally
So
bought it.
it's a good co-op game. It's really fun. Like as long as you don't have anybody who's like a major quarterback, but I don't really see that being a problem with family.
Yeah.
Then it can be a lot of fun and really cool. I do have a couple news items that I forgot about. One is kind of a coincidence based on some of the Disney park stuff that we talked about a couple weeks ago. It actually came out recently that I think Disney does feel a little bit of a pressure down in Florida because they announced a new special deal that I think in 2025 anybody who has like a, I'm gonna get the details wrong, but you can, if you're going, you can look it up. If you're going to the parks, you get like free admission to the water parks on the day of your arrival. Specifically right around the time when Universal Epic Universe is supposed to be opening. Um, which is interesting because the water parks at Disney World have always been an add-on ticket, and they're always kind of hit or miss. Like they're not something that people see as critical. I loved it when I worked there; it was fantastic,
Mm.
specifically because I didn't have to pay to go in. But they were a lot of fun to be able to just go and like relax on these themed water parks all day. Um, and for other reasons that we can talk about it another time, being a degenerate cast member there. But it's interesting to see how that they're opening these up. At first, I thought it was going to be to alleviate some of the pressure and crowded like crowds.
Yeah.
But then, like you look at the timeline of it, it's like, oh, this is directly lining up with the Epic Universe potential launch. So I thought that was worth noting that we were talking about that the other day, and they're just now announcing these things.
Well, they have to. I think we spoke about it at the time. They're going to have to. If they don't do something new, they're going to have to add value. of
Mhm.
some, and it must be so hard to keep reinventing yourself and adding more rides and refurbishing
One
the older rides and reinventing themselves, reinvent yourself. So for the sake of, if cash flow is tight, for the sake of pushing a development budget into the next fiscal year or what have you, if they just like throw in some freebies like that to add value, um, you're more likely to still buy a ticket. So it's probably smart. But to your point around it coinciding with what Universal are up to, it's interesting, and I
Yeah.
think competition's a great thing. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. And the other thing I had was it's not immediate news. I should have I was going to bring it up a couple weeks ago, but I totally forgot. And now I took notes and remembered. There has been a recent release. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the how familiar you are with a lot of the Star Wars fan cut communities. Um, I was originally introduced to it a long, long time ago to like through the Harmy's despecialized editions, where they took the special editions, like the high res special editions, and people like painstakingly reverted them back to like the theatrical release, like removed all the crazy special effects and did it's really, I think the reading about what they did is more interesting than actually watching those movies. But being a digital hoarder and all these other things, I like to collect a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But one that came out years ago, and every once in a while I'll start following pretty closely, is like the 4K 77, 4K 80, and 4K 83 projects. um, I'll leave a link to them, but it's like the or the Star Wars trilogy.com, I believe is what it is. But what they are is a group of people who and I don't want to misspeak about their motives, but the TLDR is they didn't like the Blu-ray editions that came out of the 4K releases of the original trilogy. And so they wanted, like, the contrast was all off, a bunch of other crap was wrong with them. I think they may have even had like special scenes, and they weren't the original theatrical releases. So what they wanted to
The
do,
color saturation. I was going to say the color saturation. I remember that being a big complaint for Empire.
yeah,
Massive.
yep,
It was too. There was a blue saturation or blue filter that had gone through, and it was just
and it looks
wound up
like
an awful lot of people.
Solo kind of, where it's like where there's not a lot of contrast on it. It's very dark. It's very blue,
Yeah.
things are just off, and it's inconsistent as well. So the 4K 77 project started with, I believe it's like 97%, mostly like a scan of a the original 35 millimeter reel, and same kind of thing. They reconstructed it and then repieced it back together with like laser disc scans and audio options. And it's like it's really kind of a breeding ground of like people who are really interested in like digital video restoration, audio codecs, and just all sorts of crazy stuff. But that was released years ago, and they continue to improve upon it and have all these different
I'm
variants.
on the website now. It looks absolutely fascinating. I'm on the website exactly. I mean, they've done a lot with the deleted scenes as well. They're restoring deleted scenes. I mean, this is like
Oh, it's
I've
a
got
rabbit
a I've
hole.
yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah.
rabbit
I
hole,
mean,
my friend.
this is you're going to do it to me again, aren't you? I mean,
Yes.
they've got the deleted scene from when we first meet Luke. We don't meet him now until later on after the when the Jawas are selling the droids to his uncle. But there's obviously the earlier scene that was cut where he's actually fixing one of the evaporators. He looks up into the sky and uses his macro binoculars to check out the battle going up overhead. And the what they've done is amazing, and
Yeah,
it begs the question: why on earth didn't Lucasfilm do this for their making of featurettes?
so
It's
what's
crazy.
interesting is if you once you really go down the rabbit hole, you can start looking at the timelines for these projects, and you can probably see why Lucasfilm didn't do it. Uh, some of these projects have taken 6, 7, 8+ years
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
rebuild,
Okay.
and a lot of money. So all of this to say is a long-winded way of saying 4K 80, which is the 4K version of this for Empire Strikes Back, was finally released as a 1.0 candidate on February 12th. You can get the 1080p, the 4K versions. Obviously, I'm not
Wow.
promoting piracy. If you have the whatever, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah,
It's all
yeah. It's
available on
there.
that website, and they also have like if you register for the forums, they have 4K 83, which the Return of the Jedi wasn't nearly as hard because they have a lot more of the stuff available, and it was just an easy conversion. So that's also there. But then they're also doing stuff with Attack of the Clones. They're doing stuff with everything, and there's like a million different versions and fan cuts and
Yeah.
adjustments and like HDR remakes. So if you have like an HDR TV, you can see like ones that they've applied like visual adjustments to. So they're like more contrast and like deeper blacks, brighter whites. It's wild. Good luck. Have fun. It's a it's a it's a it's hopefully you have fast internet and big hard drives because like the 4K ones are like 60 70 gigs each. Uh
Wow.
but it's awesome. I just downloaded it and or not. I don't know if anybody's listening to this, but maybe I don't know. Maybe I did. But it's cool.
It is fascinating stuff, though. I mean, I find that in my older years, I find stuff like this as equally fascinating as the original content. It's a little bit like my collecting. I mean, we ran out of time because I could talk about it all day, but an awful lot of the stuff that I really like is the bootleg stuff. The bootleg stuff I find equally as fascinating as the genuine article. And in fact, I'm sure you already know this. An awful lot of the bootleg stuff from the 70s and 80s is more expensive than the real Kenner stuff that was released at the time because it was so well, a hysterically fantastic, but also there wasn't an awful lot of it, so it's become rarer. But this is almost like the digital version of the fascination I have with bootleg toys. It's brilliant. It's really really
Have
cool.
you ever watched or have you ever heard of or seen the Backstroke of the West version of I believe it's Revenge of the Sith? Don't look it up. It's not worth it. It's horrible. Basically what somebody did was I believe it started as a bootleg where somebody was trying to do audio dubs from English
Right.
into some other language, but this was before like good translations, so it got all messed up. But then they thought that was funny. I believe they thought it was funny, so then they translated it back to English so English speakers could see like how it had been translated. It is off the rails. It's like
Excellent.
Revenge of the Sith, but it's completely just a double messed up audio and subtitles of just insane dialogue. It's pretty funny, but not worth 2.5 hours of your own time. But it's
I
of
love
a
that
certain
stuff.
time for sure.
I
I think it
love
was called
that
like
stuff.
I think it was called like Backstroke of the West. I think is what it was.
I just love them. I love the obscure. I love the bizarre. There's a DVD that came out a few. Couldn't get it on Blu-ray. DVD called Elstree. Is it Elstree 76? Elstree 75? It's a documentary of it's an unofficial documentary that was made um quite a few years ago. Elstree 76 is called. And it's really about the behind the scenes of the original English tertiary actors and stand-ins and extras that were on set. None of them are actors. I mean, they're basically, you know, these are average Joes that just came along, had no idea what they were getting into, and were asked to stick on stormtrooper costumes. And it's really funny. It's really really funny. Interestingly, IMDb, the official channel, gives it 5.9%, but the actual audience review on Rotten Tomatoes is 81%. What does that say about the audience rating? About the audience that actually watched it? Anyway, the point being is it's really quite funny, and it's not an official. It's not in any way an official um, documentary. It hasn't been sanctioned at all. It just goes behind the scenes of quite a few of the bizarre people that worked on Star Wars, in particular the Brits at the time, which were very institutionalized, very unionized British working people that worked on this film. And the funny part about this documentary is that there's at least 4 or 5 of the actors that they're filming, all their claim to fame, all of them, is that they're the stormtrooper that hit their head. Um, in on the door that lifted up when the stormtroopers come in on the Death Star and catch R2 and C3PO in hiding in that room, one of them famously hits their head on the top of the door, and all of them have claimed their claim to fame is that it was me, it was me, it was me, it was me. No one's gotten to the bottom of who the real actor was, or who. It was only one of them that hit their head, but they're all making money in these back in these dodgy comic cons and on these getting people's autographs, all taking credit for being that particular stormtrooper that hit their head. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off a tangent, but in the same vein of, or in the same spirit as the stuff that you like. I love that kind of bizarre stuff. I really do.
So I'm a huge fan of I don't want to say unofficial document. I mean, I love documentaries, period. But
Yeah.
if you have an inkling for maybe documentaries that were supposed to be, but then for some reason or another didn't happen, or weren't like released, there, if you are familiar with the movie The Emperor's New Groove, made by Disney, which is a
Yeah,
fantastic
yeah,
movie if
yeah.
you've never seen it, there is
Llama
a
face.
yes, there is a documentary called The Sweatbox, which was leaked online years and years and years ago, but it basically is a behind the scenes look at how the Emperor's New Groove started as something different, and just the turmoils of the production of that movie, and just kind of, it was never, I don't think it was ever officially released. I think Disney or somebody was like, yeah, no, not, no thanks, we changed our minds. But it was leaked online, and it's actually very, very interesting. It's a very raw look at like, here, the
Yeah.
creative process, executive involvement, and some of the pain points of being creative at that time, and just the company. It's very good. It's probably in like 360p. No, I haven't watched it in years, but I remember at the time I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of rough," but it was a very good documentary. Um, Especially since that movie, in my opinion, is very underrated.
I love
And
that
yeah,
film. I love that film. It is so funny. It is so, so funny.
good stuff. But yeah, that's my, I believe that's my, yeah, that's my news. So if you like fan cuts, go find them, and then go down that rabbit hole, and don't blame me when you run out of hard drive
No,
space.
I won't. I
Uh,
won't. I won't. Um, so, dude, episode 4, The Bad Batch.
a different approach
Let's,
is the name of that one. I made sure to look it
yeah.
up ahead of time. Yes.
What did you think?
I mean, I
Let's
think I
let,
like it. I think I like it when they release 3 episodes in a week better
yeah,
than just one.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, it's. I feel like they should have phased us down, like three 1 week, two the next, then one, because the 3-to-1 direct, and then especially kind of into more of a traditional Bad Batch Star Wars animation feel was kind of rough. There were still hints of really high quality, but it was more those familiar story beats throughout the episode. But I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm ready for next week. What were your kind of high
Mm.
level thoughts?
High level, I 100% agree with you. It was, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it was a very, in my mind, it was a very reliable cookie cutter plot for this week's story. It was, we've seen an awful lot of that kind of stuff before. It's it's tried and tested. It's like a pair of reassuring slacks or slippers. I don't know what analogy I'm trying to think of, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's not. There's no genre breaking storytelling going on. And it doesn't have to be either. I mean, as long as it's still good quality stuff. And there's some notes I took, but yeah, it did feel like I was. It did feel like I was quite an abrupt detox from last week. It felt like a normal week, and I don't want to say a filler because I hate that word,
I hate that word
because at
too.
the end, because it still served a purpose to what we saw at the end of the story. It still moved the plot along, and the conclusion of this week's story was very, very impactful and will have meaning going for the rest of the season. So I'm sure as hell not going to call it filler. But yeah, it was and I wouldn't even call it pedestrian either. So it was just very formulaic plotline for this week.
I despise the word filler because I think the word filler implies that it could be you don't need it. It's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't serve a purpose. To me, this episode is like if you compare it to like cooking, it's the prep work. It's the prep work. Like we're not doing the spices. We're not searing the steak. We're not cooking the meal, but we're chopping we're chopping the vegetables. We're doing this stuff.
Mhm.
We're prepping for the decisions and the events that are getting ready to take place next week. Like to kind of get into a smidge of it, it's we needed some time with for there to be a transition and an arc with Crosshair and Omega independently. So that way, when you get to the end of the episode and further on, decisions and actions and beliefs make sense. And so you can't just go from, hey, let's go back and boom, we're with the other guys now. And hey, maybe things are tense, but let's not be that way. That doesn't make sense. So you needed to show this transition and this arc between the two of them where Crosshair's still not great, like in terms of like the good or bad scale or whatever, or his belief system, but you can see him starting to adapt and see the way he sees Omega differently. And so I think when people are going to say inevitably say, "Oh, it's filler," it's like, but you can't do without it. It's not as exciting. It's not the main dish, but it is the prep work for making the next week or whatever so great, in my opinion.
And what's come before it, of course, as well.
Absolutely.
Is we've had I'm sure we've had this conversation at least twice in the last since we started. But how do you build from ground from ground zero to the culmination of the season? How do you keep that momentum going without pauses, without without a palate cleanser? And bearing in mind what we built up to last week, which was the escape from Mount Tantus. Do you just keep progressing and progressing and progressing? You kind of every week you progress the story or escalate the situation or make it more desperate. It somehow nullifies or dilutes the impact of the previous week. So you have to kind of start again. And I don't mean start again as in the story. I'm talking about start again as in the tempo of the drama of the event. And I thought it was good. I mean, I mean, if you'll indulge me, I've got a couple of notes here.
Yeah, absolutely.
The spaceport that they ended up in, I thought was very Macquarie-esque. So there's a couple of old drawings of Mos Eisley that he did, in particular with stormtroopers, the early concept stormtroopers wearing the ponchos. Maybe not quite as dorky as the ones we saw today, but they were with ponchos with the amazing, colourful characters of the people that and aliens that populated or lived in Mos Eisley. And I got that feeling from the start, and it was just from the very very first couple of shots of the denizens of this starport. It just gave me that instant Macquarie vibe, and then it disappeared quite quickly. But there was a couple of shots at the very, very beginning there, the hustle and bustle, the colours in particular, the concept stormtrooper, which we know is taken from one of the early concepts that he had for the stormtrooper when they came out with this, proto stormtrooper concept in the first place. Um, the second pieces or the second notes I made were really there were two tropes. Hence the reason why I said it was quite reliable storytelling that we know and love already. The first being the port official taking a bribe. Well, that reminded me of Solo,
Hmm.
of being open to a bribe. The second trope was man and child on the run, with the child taking the lead in many cases. Well, that reminded me of Kenobi, for example. It's stuff that they've done before, but it works. It works really, really well, especially with someone with a character as strong as Omega. Um, and there's the rest of it is just stuff I've written down. So Crosshair's redemption, the fact that he wasn't perhaps out for himself anymore, and he did hesitate, double back, and go after Omega as she's trying to save her dog, her space dog. Um, and that really takes it's a really good point in my mind that he's taking the journey back to who he wants to be as a person. Whether the other boys will forgive him or not is another question for another week. I don't know if you noticed when they were breaking out before they broke out the animals. I definitely heard the cry of a porg.
Mhm.
I don't know if you
Yep,
heard that in one of the
I
cages.
did.
There was a cry of a porg there.
It took me a minute to figure out what it was. I'm like, that's extremely it's like the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah,
can pick it out, but it's like, but what is like what was that? It's a reference and a clip from something
yeah,
else. But what and then finally it took me a couple minutes of like, oh, that's what it was.
yeah. And then the only other question I had, sorry, I had two more notes. I do apologize. Um, the tentacle that came out from the cage to devour the officer,
I have that
was
note
that
as
a Ra-
well.
was that a Rathtar?
I think it is. I think it was. That I said,
Right.
did a Rathtar kill that guy? Question mark. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was a Rathtar. It was the right size. It was I think they made it seem ominous enough. They're like, do you know what that was?
Yeah,
It's like,
you don't see the ball with the eye, yeah, but
yeah.
it seemed like a Rathtar to me.
So
Um,
I
and then and then lastly, I was just going to say the reunion. The reunion at the end was tremendous, and something you could see it a mile off. As soon as you saw the ship, you knew they were there. I was a bit worried at first that they weren't actually going to be there. They didn't get the message, or indeed that Hemlock had somehow intercepted the message and was going to be there waiting on that moon for her instead. But the reunion I thought was fantastic, and that big old lump coming out and wiping away tears from his face as he holds Omega, I thought was absolutely phenomenal. And then obviously the reveal that she had some help, and that and Crosshair came down the steps and fade to black. Thought was a really, really good ending. So they're the only notes I've made. So over to you, mate.
so I definitely want to save. I have questions about what we think is going to happen with Crosshair. To me, like I know a lot of people really don't like him, but to me, he is one of the most up in the air arcs, and so I'll come back to that in a minute because I really want to hone in on that one. I had a couple notes as well with the animals when they came to that like what was the like the depot, a shipping depot. I got
Yeah,
major Jurassic Park vibes with the
yeah,
fence, the crates, and just all the way they were kind of handling and moving them around. It almost felt pace for pace with how they handle the bad guys always handle the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. I'm like, this feels like an homage in a way.
yeah,
Um, Definitely had the Rathar. Did the Rathar was that a Rathar? Had that there. Um, more fly on the wall. How does it all work? Sean's speculation here of like there's the episode definitely had tropes, but there were also some things that were just like I feel like we've never seen this level of quality or this type of scene before in Bad Batch, like what
yeah,
we've seen them in this season. And so it's like, okay, say they have 1,000 minutes of like, is this how it works? Okay, we have 1,000 minutes of cartoon or of animation. We have X number of budget. We really want to take these scenes, make them really, really nice. And so these are really nice. And so does everything else in the middle just kind of like, just like make it like the practical side of things, like make it work. So like you'd have those
yeah,
scenes where they're showing like the planet and then like the multiple planets and like the landscape. And it was just gorgeous. It reminded me of Starfield in a lot of ways, like
yeah, yeah,
minus the
yeah,
fog. It was like, this is gorgeous. And I don't feel like we get this in Bad Batch very often. These long shots of like multiple planets that are like way too close to each other in like in one aspect, but it's like it was just beautiful. Like I actually had to pause it and be like, this is this is crazy. Like I feel like this is
Mm.
a different level of quality and kind of I hate to use the word like beauty, I guess, like natural beauty used in Star Wars animation. So I thought that was really neat. Um, the cliffhanger reunion I thought was very very well orchestrated. It almost felt like something like I don't know enough about like traditional films, but I feel like the way it was um like shot and like the angles and the way the ships were lined up and the loading ramps. I'm like, this feels very reminiscent of like another film like a Kurosawa or something like that. Like it almost feels
Yeah.
like they took the shots directly from something else because it just felt very planned and coordinated uh,
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. I will, before we go to the crosshair stuff, I will say there is one thing about it's not necessarily the Bad Batch, but about this time and the art style or things that always really irks me, and I just feel like I have to get it out there because it's always in my notes. I feel like they've done really really good job with like the Macquarie proto stormtrooper kind of look, and like they have a certain aesthetic throughout
Hmm.
their shows. Each show has its own kind of vibe, like each series, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, et cetera, et cetera. The Republic Commando design stands out like a sore thumb to me every time he appears on screen. It is like they have the very stylized stormtroopers, but then they take that Republic Commando, and it just feels like they took an asset from something not Bad Batch, put it in there. Which I'm already not a fan of the Republic Commando, anyways. It reminds me of that like Mountain Dew, Force Unleashed era of like just
Yeah.
make their helmets like bobbleheads and light it up from the inside, make them all look like they're lumbering like He-Man figures walking around. It's like it just doesn't fit. So every time I see them, I'm like, just we don't need it. We don't need them. Like that
Yeah.
just feels like a weird thing. So that's done. I got it out of my
Well, they've
system.
tried.
It's out of the way.
Clearly they've tried to stay as close to the video game design as they could. Um, which is a good game, by the way. It's a very very good game.
Yeah.
Um, for its time, it was very very good indeed. But it never. It was very. It was very Super Commando, Halo-esque to Super Commando. It never really fit quite the aesthetics of Star Wars anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but I must admit they don't bother me as much as they do you. But I get, it's again different strokes. It doesn't matter.
And I
It
feel
doesn't
and
matter.
I'm happy for anybody who loves it. That's like I just had to get it
Yeah.
out of my system. It's like every time I see it, I'm like, I just need to like verbalize it and get it out. It's like podcast
Mm.
therapy a little bit. It's like, hey, I don't like that design, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't matter. At the
I
end of the
must admit
day,
I've never understood the illuminated um, T visor. I've never really understood that because um, no other trooper has that, and it's kind of a giveaway really to your location. I mean, I know that they're bright white, which is not smart anyway as troopers, but it's I've never really understood that in
it,
itself anyway.
if it, I guess, like, not to not, I don't want to make it seem like I'm being negative about it. It's just more of a critique of the design. It feels like Star Wars has such strong imagery and designs when it comes to ships,
Yeah.
armor, and things like that. Like if you wanted to do something that's a level up, I like the Death Trooper in Rogue One. Like that to me is like, okay, it's got a light and they've got different accents and things, but it's sleeker, it's cooler, and it stays in the same vein. The illuminated T visor feels like it looked cool in a video game or on a cover of a thing. So now we got to like roll with it. Like it's
Mm,
almost like I drew this cool picture and you guys like it. It's like lit up now. It's cool. And they're like, yeah, let's roll with that. And it just feels like we're kind of
mm,
continuing with that. Uh, in my opinion, a weak design, but it's cool. Yeah, hey, different strokes for different folks. If they made an
yeah.
action figure where you could push a button on the back and its T visor lit up, that'd be sick. I wouldn't buy it, but that'd be cool. It's like a great use of the license, as our friends like to say.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but my big thing is I love Omega. I love the Bad Batch. I'm my stance. I don't think anything's bad's gonna happen to Omega. I don't. I don't really worry about Wrecker and um, Hunter necessarily. There may be whatever, and I think that one planet with the island, I think that's like the home, like where things are going to happen. Like in the end,
Hmm.
the the person that I am most interested in is Crosshair, especially after this latest episode where he didn't fully have a redemption arc. He just
No.
he kind of opted to stay together. Like it could have he could be being redeemed. But as of right now, he's really kind of in this like, so let's stick together. We're gonna be better off until we get out of this, and let's see what happens. And I think the ending was a great representation of that, as they're both standing on loading ramps of their own, like their own ships. They didn't come down and meet each other. And so I think there's a couple different. I'll kind of give my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. There's a couple different paths that we can go with Crosshair, that they can take with Crosshair. One, I think there's the low hanging fruit. Um, One that I think a lot of people are expecting, which is he's fully redeemed and he does a self sacrifice to save the day, and then everybody's like, "Oh, everything is okay." Crosshair became good in the end. Um, I I will be happy with that, but I'm always looking for like that not easy road in some of these stories.
Yeah.
Like I think it's too easy. It's like I'd love to see if Crosshair like makes it, but he doesn't like come back to the group. But he's like, I'll help, but I'm like, this isn't my vibe. I'm not here to be a family. I've always been an outsider. Um, I'm gonna go do my own life of salt, not like a penance or like a life of like isolation. It's just like, this isn't me. You guys have this family. I need to make it right by shooting somebody in the back, killing Hemlock, whatever, blah blah blah. But I survive, and like that's it. Like, and I'm see you later. I'm going this way. You guys go that way. Whatever. Um, that's what I hope happens. But I'm curious because there's all the imagery of like, okay, those two are clearly still pissed at him, and he's like, he's never really shown a sign of like remorse. And I'm also curious of what they've done to him.
Oh, I
And
don't know. He did say to, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
no, no, go ahead.
He did say to Amiga, "It's been months. I don't know, Amiga. It's been months." Showing that, you know, not that he regrets it, but he knows that the boys have a conflicting opinion of what he's done. And I must admit, I'm not in one of those camps that hate him.
No.
I don't hate him at all, and we're talking about a cartoon character here. So I mean, I don't really have many, you know, I don't lay awake at night thinking about it, but I don't hate him. And in fact, if you think about it, he was doing what he was programmed to do. It's not his fault. It's not his fault that he fought his brothers. Um, he was following orders. That's what they were programmed to do. They were the ones that were defective. You know,
Yeah.
they're defective for all the right reasons. I'm not that much of an idiot, but they were defective ultimately. He was the one following orders. He was he was made that way. He didn't have a choice in any of his decision making, because that's the way he was made. So I certainly don't hold him any ill will, if I was to take this stuff amazingly seriously. But on your point, I think that we did start to see a little bit of uh, the guy's in chaos. The guy has gone from being the most dedicated, besotted, loyal trooper, clone trooper to the new empire, to witnessing some stuff that made him really consider, really question his own self, his own purpose, and what he was doing. And that in itself, the emotional turmoil from that would be um, debilitating in many ways. But then he goes through this, this whole process of it's almost like the 5 stages of grief, where you then get to, and I think he's at this point at the moment where he's starting to understand why his brothers, or he certainly understands now why his brothers rebelled and did their own thing and did what they felt that was right. And he's now resided to the fact that he is also someone that's demonstrated independent thought in his own right, and has pushed back on on the man, on the authority. Um, I think, to your last point on what will happen with him, I really hope they don't go down. To your point, it's an easy way out. We could see the rest of the season with him having a hot and cold, or should we say, tepid relationship with his brothers, but them keeping him on as muscle to get to do the kind of work that they need to get done before the series end or the season end. And then he truly shows his worth to them and his love for them by sacrificing himself in some heroic way. Typically, well, I guess from in saving Omega in particular would make that a particularly compelling story. But to your point, it is a little bit predictable. What I would like to think is that he will. Again, one of the stages of grief is like realization and acceptance, and I hope they do make it to the island world. I hope that after all of the turmoil and the final battle and whatever happens in the end of the season, to bring it to a close, that they do get to go back to the island, and he sees all of these rescued clones that are now living, including the boys from last week, from last week. Um, the more junior clones, all living a peaceful life and in coexistence with each other, and happy and safe, and him being able to finally see some peace for himself as well, away from the need to fight. There's also a further development of that, which I think would be a very unpopular opinion, is that maybe Hunter dies.
That I think
Maybe
that's I think that's definitely an
Hunter
option.
dies. Maybe Hunter's the one that sacrifices himself for Omega and to save the rest of the team, and that the redemption story for Crosshair is that he becomes the natural leader. He becomes the leader, and it fades to black with Crosshair taking on the hunter role to protect the community on the island, and to make sure that Crosshair, and Crosshair vows to continue the work that Hunt had started by providing the safe haven, maybe with or without the help of Echo and our buddy Rex.
So I
Echo
think
and Rex.
so on top of that, I think here's a long-winded way of saying my post episode 4 Bad Batch predictions. But before I do that, I don't I don't foresee I don't predict that Crosshair is going to get that ending. From my side, from where I sit, it's like Crosshair's story is he's a bit of a tragedy. Where I feel like he'll have victories and he'll have um, an arc, but like to me, the Crosshair's story is the struggle for your own agency. Like you can look
Yeah,
at the clones and like, oh, we're just following orders, but there's like subtext there of like, I have a chip in my head and I'm programmed to do this. We've never been able to be free thinking, whatever. And I think it's also a story of, you know, this, even though Hunter and Wrecker are like a tropes and like they are able to be purely good, most things in real
yeah,
life are not. Like you don't change your mind from something you've been set in your ways about or the way you've been programmed to being um a good, air quotes, good person, or a new way of thought and a new way of living. I mean, look at how real life is. You don't go from one train of thought to maybe a more progressive train of thought overnight. it takes time, conversations, life experience, but I think the Crosshair has an he has a sense of atonement there, and the stages of grief. But I think it's his battle for agency, which I think he's still struggling with, of
Mm.
like following orders, doing what needs to get done, a very literal mindset. To your point about the island and Hunter sacrifice, I could very well see that happening. Hunter being the paternal you saw last season with some changes that have happened. He's always been the paternal figure to Omega, the protector. But now that you say this with a Hunter sacrifice, that would make me feel like Tech is still alive, and I would see Tech coming back and his girlfriend on that planet, them almost becoming the parental
Mom and dad.
figures, the
Yeah, yeah,
mom
you
and
could be
dad,
right.
and then Wrecker's the buddy. Um, and personally, this is me just being really selfish with what I want. I don't see Crosshair in the picture. Like whether that means he's like, I don't care if he goes off and he fights for the rebellion or whatever, or he goes out with Rex and Echo and the others are like, no, I am a soldier like this, and now I'm doing it on my own terms. Like, because I don't see him being there and being like, I'm going to protect this island. It's like because I think that's where he struggled at his agency of like, they've told me I'm a soldier. This is who I am. These are my skills. Um,
Mm.
but now I would hope he was going through this transition of it's not what I've been told I who I am and what I want to do and what my skill set is. No, this is how I can help. I can apply the person that I've been programmed to be, but I'm doing it on my own terms now. No one's telling me what to do. I'm going to go out and fight and for good because I don't see him being at home like, oh, let's go play with the toys or
No,
let's raise
but
people.
as with many veterans that have gone through PTSD, it would be amazing if he could find some peace.
Yeah,
But I think
absolutely.
you could, but you could be right. You could be right that he finds his peace in other ways, in that he keeps using the skills that he has, albeit on the side of good. You never know. He might actually be the in A New Hope when that rebel fleet trooper is holding those that he's in the on Yavin, on the rebel base
Yeah.
in Yavin. He's on the top of that. He's monitoring the Millennium Falcon landing. That could be Crosshair with a large helmet on. You never know.
I love it.
You never.
And with all that's being said, I'm 100% wrong on all of this. I've never been right on any
Oh,
of
me
my
neither.
predictions. And so,
Oh, me neither.
but
Me
it
neither.
is it is funny to try to apply what my own wishes and a deeper meaning that I would love to see portrayed in something as simple as an animation where it could be enjoyed simply, but you can also take it and really peel it back, and I think there's real mastery in that when it comes to writing if you can accomplish both. It's like kids can enjoy it and people who don't
Well,
want to
when
think
you
deep, and but it can
yeah,
also
I
be
mean,
more.
with the exception of Resistance, pretty much every animation, so Clone Wars to Rebels, from Rebels to Bad Batch, it's all been interconnected. Oh, excuse me, I was about to sneeze. It's all been interconnected, and I really hope there is something after Bad Batch. Maybe not 6 months from now, maybe 12 months from now, or I do hope that there is something quite wholesome about having an animated series in the first place. Anyway, but there's also something quite nice about it because it doesn't seem as high risk or
Mhm.
as high tension as the live action programs, because they're not they're not judged with so much. There's not as much inspection on them because they are animations, so it seems less risky and they can take some chances. And they've had some, and I really do hope that there are stories that come from Bad Batch. And I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I get that. I get that. That's the beauty of the amazing palette and portfolio of Star Wars content that we have today, is that you can pick and choose what you want. Um, but I hope we do get to see, and not just at the end of this season. I hope we do get to see a little piece of what what comes from the end of the Bad Batch in a future endeavor.
Yeah, because I mean they
Because
can't just leave it open
I
ended.
enjoy it.
They
I'm
can't
enjoying
leave
it.
it
I
open
really
ended.
am.
Like what happened? Omega's clearly critically important to something.
Yeah.
You can't you can't just sever it completely. I mean, you can, but then be like, oh, there's files on the computer. We don't need her. We have her data. Like
And
whatever.
I know I won't be making any fans from this because and I'm sure I'll get a little bit of hate from this as well. But there's no force users at the moment. I know Ventress is a few. It looks like she's going to appear in this season, and that's fine. But at the moment, for the most part, Bad Batch is about it's the any man or every man story, which I really do like, and it's a really nice. It's refreshing not to have everyone as a force user and wielding a lightsaber and doing stuff. That said, we know that the experiments going on in Mount Tantus are associated with that, but I'm talking about the characters themselves. There's no these are normalish people doing normalish things.
Well, it's like
Um,
Andor. It's like Andor. It's like
yeah, it's exactly like Andor. Where I feel exactly.
the human stories are what's compelling, at least for
Yeah,
me, and I think for you as well, because it shows that things aren't black and white. Things are complicated. People
yeah,
transition. Things take time. There's gray areas. Like it's not all like not everybody has the context that these are the bad guys. These are the good guys, and
mm,
like, and I think that's what I really liked about the Rogue One movie in the first 4 seconds he's killing his friend. And it's like sometimes good can is arbitrary and like you look at the goal and the means that we get there are messy. I'm not that is not a larger statement of my personal
yeah,
beliefs,
yeah,
anything like that. I'm just saying like I like the storytelling nuance and like shit's complicated. Uh and think think and for yourself and how does it make you feel, how does it push you in different directions. And I think Bad Batch is really really good at it. And to your point about the animation feeling special and kind of being low risk, I think it's because it subverts expectations. You expect it, and I think Resistance would have gotten there if it had more time. Because if you look at all the animated series, they all start one way, and the next thing you know, it's like, man, I'm kind of have emotions, and like it's I see the strings being pulled, and it's
hmm
because you go in, it's like, oh, it's just gonna be a dumb cartoon, whatever. And next thing you know, it's like, oh man, this is like has like real world implications, real emotions, real feelings, real conflict,
yeah,
and that's it's awesome. I love it. I love every minute of it.
for sure. No, I'm looking forward to it. I am looking forward to the rest of the season. One question I had for you, and I don't know if because I can't find it or I didn't look for it. Am I right in saying there are typically 20 episodes in a season, but there's a lot more in this season? Is that right?
I think it depends because the last seasons are always like they're always different. So this
Right,
season
okay.
has 15 episodes
Right.
ending on May
Okay.
1st.
Okay. That doesn't seem like a lot.
How funny would it be if Ventress never shows up and it was all just a tease? I mean,
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, they read our show notes. Gotta be at least one lie in the one some sort of made up bullshit in the trailer somewhere. That would be fantastic.
The Bad
No,
Batch
I
is
am
going to be
looking forward to it though.
45 episodes this season.
So what do you think the main I mean the main push of the rest of the story is going to have to be Hemlock and his cronies trying to get their hands on Omega again. What do you think the Bad Batch's story is? Apart from running away, of course. What do you think their story is going to be? Do you think they're going to hook up with Rex and Echo to because one of the last comments that Omega made was to go back to Tantus to save the other clones. And of course, Rex and Echo are both saving clones at the moment. That's what they do. So there's got to be a team up at some point, right? And rather than I keep wanting to say Warlock, rather than Hemlock catch up with them, they actually they go back to Tantis to confront him. That's where the confrontation happens. That's kind
I
of in my mind where I see it going.
I think there has to be some kind of team up at some point. Like there has to
Mm.
be something in the next 11 episodes to justify Ventress being there. I hope she's not just a bounty hunter. Like I think that's
Yeah, that would suck.
like I don't understand how she would just be able to exist given
Yeah.
her past as a bounty hunter um among the likes. Like if they brought in some like boba nonsense, that would be wild. That'd be since the whole boba and omega stuff, I think that'd be crazy, like, and not in a bad way, just like whoa, did not see that coming. um but with the team up, it's like it can't be too big. So it's like, okay, can they I feel like it can't be bigger than Tantus, because then that would warrant a response that's big enough to be a bigger story part. Like it
Yeah,
can't be a
yeah,
full blown rebellion yet. And so it's like, but I do feel like this is the culminating moment for clones, the leftovers, however you want to call it. I feel like this, whatever's going to happen in this season, I feel like is going to be the cherry on top of the clones were deeper than just being cloned bad guys. They actually have like a an arc that finishes nicely. Um, it'll be crazy if it ends up being close to my what I wanted from the Rise of Skywalker, where it's like, oh, it's like a stormtrooper clone rebellion
Rebellion. Yeah.
against their former things. Um, and there's just because then that gives you a lot of cannon fodder if not, so then you could have that scale and chaos where uh Warlock or Hemlock is gone and
Mm.
Tantus is destroyed, but the secret data tapes made it out with a little bit of the research, kind of flipping A New Hope on its head and Rogue One on its head. um but I do think there's gonna be a team up. I don't know, like I'd love to see Rex and Echo in there with maybe other people that they've come across to be a larger
Well, we
battalion
know. I
to
mean,
come
we
in to do
know
it.
from Rebels that Rex eventually calls it a day and settles down.
Yeah.
He jury rigs a walker, an old walker with um Wolf. Is it Commander Wolf
Wolf
and
and Gregor.
Gregor? Gregor. That's the he's the nutty guy, right? The
I
guy
believe
that
so.
goes a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, at some point, like so we haven't seen either of those two other clones at some point, and I don't know. It would be nice connective tissue. I know doesn't not everything has to connect. Be nice to see some connective tissue, kind of with those guys as well. Maybe they're at Atlantis now, being experimented on, and part of the rescue is to save those guys. Maybe part of the PTSD or the troubles that Gregor is demonstrating in Rebels is
Nice.
because the experimentation on him.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
actually a really good point.
never know.
I
Looking
think I
forward
think
to it.
I think you're onto I think you're onto it. I strongly feel like the the clones that are left in parentheses are conceptually imprisoned in Tantus, and that will be the
Yeah,
culmination. That is the purpose, and the culmination of this is like doing justice to the clones that are left, and so then they can all move on with the next chapter of whatever. So I do think that's hopefully because
yeah,
you
that'd
got to
be
button it
cool.
all up. You got to button up the Clone Wars. You got to button all these things up. Where we have all these like millions of people everywhere, um, and it's like they need that closure to their own story, because we can't have the Clone Wars offshoot Part 3 series animated where we're still fighting for clone rights and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm excited. And now I'm actually more excited now that we've talked about it. It's like I hadn't thought about really where it ends beyond our individual characters that we have currently.
Well, they found their Shangri-La on that island, right? And we don't see an awful lot of we don't see any clones in the OT. Although you might want to, some people may argue that Rex was on the battle in the Battle of Endor. But the point I'm trying to make is that what was I going to say? The point I was going to make was that ultimately they're not prevalent, and I know they've got accelerated aging. So come Rebels time frame or the OT time frame, they are old men. But so I guess you could think the worst and assume that they've all passed away. But it would be nice to think that island
They're
is
off.
their retirement home.
They're off in Star Wars Portugal, just enjoying their beach vacations.
Exactly.
They put their
Exactly.
time in.
Exactly. Exactly. I was hoping that I might be able to find out. Oh, we do. We do. Hang on a second. Right. So next week's episode title is The Return. Ooh. March the 6th, 2024. The Return.
The return of who?
Don't know. Or to where? We don't know. We don't know. Well, exciting.
I know. Now I'm more excited. I'm excited already, but now it's like, dang,
Yeah.
now I'm more excited. Dang, am I high? Like, have I come full circle with this podcasting stuff? It's like I used to. I mean, I still do. I still listen to other podcasts to get excited about story beats, but now it's like now I'm just hyping myself up. Like now now it's just a full circle of like, oh, just talk about it with Andy, and now we're hyping our
This
own.
is the point. This is but let's face it. That's the whole reason for doing this in the first place. The fact that one or two other people might listen as well is a bonus. All right, my friend. Another good week.
It is.
Another great week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. Excited to chat about it next week. I did have one thing I forgot to tell you earlier. It's very short. It's just the one thing. Madison and I were talking. We had a conversation about like taking people's last names if people get married and whatever. And she's like, "Oh, I like the idea of you know, people who like make up a new one and then like they both just take on the new one." And I'm like, what do you think about Hati? We just both take that one on. I like that. She's like, I'd consider it. It's like, yes.
She had no idea what the context was.
Oh no, she knows exactly what the context is.
Oh, I see. Okay, if we're fine. There's something I forgot to tell you actually before the show. I'm sorry to break this to you actually on the as we're recording now. I'm actually working away next week. I'm working abroad with work next week. So we're going to have to work out what we do next week. It may well have to be the following weekend, so 2 or 3 days later than normal, if that works for you, my friend.
That actually works
Or
perfectly for
we'll
me.
Okay, fine. I don't want to let you down, because, and also selfishly, don't want to lose a week because this is like I said to you before, this is keeping me sane. So yeah, I don't want to miss it, but I do know that next week is going to be a bit difficult. I might just ring you anyway next Wednesday at a really inconvenient time, and ask what you thought. But yeah, I'd forgotten I'm actually working away next week. It's going to make
As
life
much
a
as I
little bit tricky.
as much as I'd love to, just hang you out to dry on this and make you feel like the bad guy. I'm actually going to be away as well for part of next week too. So it's
Oh,
just
cool.
it's perfect. It's perfect timing.
Nothing like airing our dirty washing in public in front of everyone else. Brilliant. Okay, buddy. Well, listen, have an amazing week, and we will catch up with everyone. And thank you, as always, for putting up with our prattling on and our bizarre assumptions of what is going on. Thank you, Sean. If you want to take us out, mate.
Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Andy, for doing this. You guys know where to find us. Justchillin.com. And you all know us anyways. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Love you.
Bye.